need to pay. And then my proof of fund will show you that I can pay that first year. So I put, if you have any title document to show that you're going to come back to Nigeria, even when we know that from there you want to get into PR and all that, but you still need to show evidence that you plan to come back to Nigeria after your MBA or master's or anything. And then for me, I did IELTS, the general one. So I also put the result to show that I didn't do academic, but I did the general one. And then this is my result under additional documents. And the last thing I put was the upfront medical slip that I had done earlier. And I know some of my friends talked about if you've been denied before, because I think Canada, US, and UK, I think they share information. So you don't want to lie about that. So if you've been denied any visa before, even though it's not Canada, maybe US or UK, you like to put it there in your application. And then maybe if you're married or something, you can put your marriage certificate or anything. So depending on your, like, depending on you, so you just had those additional documentation because you want to give them as much as possible because you won't be there to defend yourself, like I said before, when they're going through your application. So now let's go back to the letter of explanation, which is the most important thing. So for the letter of explanation, which is part of your additional documents, this one you're writing a letter to IRCC talking about yourself. So for me, I talked about my introduction is that I'm a Nigerian citizen, I've gotten admission at Rotman, and I'm trying to apply for a study permit for my MBA program. And I believe that this is like the next step in my career. And I talk about my study plan, what I've been doing before in Nigeria before deciding to go for my MBA, talking about my background, talking about my work experience, talking about my biggest accomplishments that I've done. Then I used to work in treasury. So I talked about how I made income for the bank. So they know me that I'm someone that is ready to like do something big. So I spoke about that in my letter of explanation. Then you go straight to your for so at that time I was already in the PR, permanent residence application. I was already in the pool for that. We all know that Canada runs like an express entry profile, whereby you get points based on your work experience, your education, and all that. And then they do draws like I don't know if it's bi-weekly or weekly or monthly. And then if your points matches that draw, you get an express entry or permanent residency application, something like that. So I was already in the pool, so I needed to state my dual intent that I'm already in the pool for permanent residence. But mind you, this application is for my study permits and not for permanent residence because they will know. RSC will check your records. So it's just good for you to state that dual intent. And then I spoke about my tuition. I did the extract from the Rotman website too in my letter of explanation. And I also talked about the funds available for my studies that I already put in my proof of funds, but I now explained it in my letter of explanation that, okay, the first one is $5,000 that was initial deposit that was made to Rotman. I talked about my scholarship. I talked about the funds I had in my account. And then you have to explain these funds. So if you have a box, like you have a lot of money in your account, maybe you sold a property or you sold anything, you need to explain it because they just don't want to see monies in your account. You need to tell them where the money came from. If you got money from your sponsor, if you got money from loan, they want to understand where the money is coming from because they want to be sure that it's not fraudulent. So you need to explain the inflows in your account that you're planning to use for the proof of funds. I did that. Maybe I was extra, but I did the application by myself, so I needed to be extra. So after that, you explain the inflows, and then if you have any prior refusers, you can also talk about that, and then you can tell them, well, maybe they refused me, but I've been to other countries, I've been to these countries before, I have this property, and anything just to show that you have something in Nigeria, you have family, and you're planning to come back. You're not planning to apply for school because you want to go stay in their country. And you talk about the language test too, that you can speak English, you already approve of that. So I did the language test. So going back to all I've said, to summarize it, the first thing is to do your upfront medicals. And the next thing is to proof of funds, like table it down, show like the different proof of funds. I also included my pay slip. I remember that my 4 months pay slip. that I have included for my proof of funds. And there's something else that I also put in my letter of explanation or proof of funds. I think when you retire, you can claim a part of your pension. I'm not sure how much, maybe 80% or so. So I also put it that that's expected funds that will serve as my proof of funds. Like that can help me with my living expenses. So I also put that in like the proof of funds. So after proof of funds, there's something they call additional document. That's optional, but that's where you get the chance to explain yourself, influence in your account, anything else you want to tell IRCT that it's not in their regular application. And like I mentioned, for me, there was additional documents for me. I talked about my letter explanation, my resume, the extra of tuition fees, the IELTS, and the upfront medical slip. So that was where I put all those things. So like me, I kind of explained. They said, please see attach my additional documents in the following order. You put it in that order, and then you make sure that those documents are in the order you already specified to them. So the point of doing all these things is just to, you're not gonna get an interview. You want to be like as clear as possible. Make sure your documents are complete, your proof of funds is legit, so that when they're checking, they will have no other option than to grant you the study permit. I know I've said too much, but I think that's it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. That was very detailed. And I'm sure for folks going to Canada, we appreciate the context behind some of these documents. And so thank you for that. So if you could get to Isaac and Aminat, just provide some information on the key steps, like types of documents you need, payments you need to make as well, just to get to that visa interview stage.
Okay, let me go first. So of course, after getting your I-20 from your university, one important thing you will see on your I-20 is something called a service ID, which you would need when trying to schedule your visa interview. So the first thing you do after getting your I-20 is to try and create an account on the AVITS portal, which is what is used currently for scheduling visa interview dates. So in the AVITS portal, you log in. So you create an account, input your details and your service ID. So after doing that, you're now able to generate a slip for payment. Now for payment, there are two main ways to pay. You can either go to the closest first bank to you, or you pay with a card. Now I did try to pay with a card, but for one reason or the other, it wasn't really going through. But I'm sure there are some people that have probably done that. And the advantage of paying with a card is once you're done with paying with a card, you can immediately start seeing dates, for interviews. But if you pay, at the first bank branch, then you have to wait maybe 48 hours or less, about 48 hours, for your payment to be confirmed before you can start scheduling dates. So it depends on what you want. If you can pay through card, I think that's better. I mean, that's saves you 48 hours. Time is of the essence here. But if you can't, then go to the closest first bank branch to you. On your slip, there's a code that is unique to you that you used to pay at the teller, and that's fine. After payment, you wait for 48 hours for confirmation of payment, and then you can proceed to scheduling dates. Now, that thing I should mention is for some people, and I did experience this, there's something called like a pre-approval processing, where basically it's to fact check some of the things you've submitted. You're asked to submit your I-20 and your passport. Now, not everybody goes through this stage, but I think for most people they do. And the time during which this takes also varies per person. For me, it took almost 2 weeks for it to be resolved. I was actually worried because I thought maybe I'd done something wrong, but when I made my findings, it's actually normal. For some, it takes longer. For some, it's just a couple of days. For some, they totally bypass that stage. So irrespective of whatever you get, just try and do your findings to be sure everything's in order. And after doing that, you can now start scheduling dates for your interview. But during that process, sorry, I forgot to mention something really important. Apart from the service ID, you also need a DS-160 confirmation number. Sorry, that should be the first thing. You also go to your DS-160 link to fill your details. Now, you don't necessarily need to complete the entire form. I'd advise maybe you complete the personal section, which is enough for you to get your confirmation number. After getting your confirmation number, you can just maybe store it somewhere on your computer so you have the number. And anytime you want to keep editing your form, you input your number and be asked some security questions. So you don't need to complete it in one day. Because one thing I've noticed is maybe a few weeks to your interview, or after a while, you might want to change your story. And if you've put some things on your DS-160 and you have submitted it, then you obviously can't change your story there. So you want to be sure that whatever it is you're submitting is what you're going to say, at the interview. So those are the two things you need to do. And in the midst of all this, there's also the service fee payment. The service fee payment needs to be done before your interview. So there's no fixed date for it. You don't need to do it as soon as you get your I-20. No, you can do it maybe a week to your interview. If for one reason or other you can't make the payment early. But just make sure before you go for your interview, you've made the service fee payments. Now, it's not something you can do here in Nigeria. You need someone to make the payment for you abroad using Western Union. However, I didn't really have anybody at the time that could do this for me. So another thing I did was to check online for other means of payment, and not to do an advert or anything, but something called the Pay For Me app, where they can help you process that payment. It's something they do for international students that can't make the payment in their home countries. So I use the Pay For Me app. Of course, there's a service fee charge, and the service fee is $350. So you do the conversion to your local currency, you make the payment together with the service charge, you send it to their account, and in about 48 hours, you get your receipt. So that's one way to make the service fee payment if you don't have anybody in the States that can make the payment on Western Union. But if you do, and you're more comfortable with that, I think that's better. You can reach out to your friend or relatives or anybody you know that can make the payment for you. So these are the key steps really prior to scheduling your date for interview at the embassy.
All right, thank you, Isaac. That was very detailed. And so we're just going to ask Aminat this next question. So for the funding section of the I-20, I mean, not everyone has 120K lying around. So how were you able to show that you had the necessary proof of funds? Like, so what are the different ways people can think about funding? So I know there's scholarship, there are loans as well. So just can you provide some more context on that?
Yeah, sure. So before your I-20 is issued, your school, I mentioned your school will reach out to you. But just before they reach out to you, it depends on the school you go. Some schools will help you facilitate your loan application process. That's if you do not have the full funds, while some other schools would leave you to, find your loan yourself. And so that means maybe finding a co-signer or whatever. But the point is, at the time you're trying to apply for your I-20, you should have a proof of fund. Now, that money doesn't necessarily have to have been in your account for like 6 months or 8 months or whatever. You could actually just do a transfer the day before and then have that balance show on your account, print out that statement and send to your school. At least that was my case. I don't know if it's different in other schools, but you don't necessarily have to have that money, lying there for months and months before you can use it as a proof of fund. So long the balance is showing on your account, you're good. And the only amount you have to prove that you have is your first year fees. So if your total cost of attendance is say $250,000, for example, you don't have to show $250,000. What you have to show is $125,000. So and that can come from a variety of sources. You can use like your bank statement if you have the money in your bank account. You can use, your family bank statement, but it has to be like a direct relative, and this has to be somebody who wants to sponsor you. So if you're using a relative's bank statement, they would have to write a letter of sponsorship on your behalf, right, to show that they're willing to sponsor your education. And I don't know that you can use just anyone. It has to be someone who is close to you, like your dad, your mom, your immediate siblings. And then for the loan, you would have you would have applied for a loan and then you would have gotten an approval. So the point is, at the very least, whatever amount you have in all of those proof of funds that you're presenting should cover for your first year cost of attendance. The cost of attendance varies by school. So you have to reach out to your school to confirm what the cost of attendance is going to be for your school. So long you're able to show that balance in your account, show your loan approval that tallies and sums up to the cost of attendance, you should get your I-20. And I should say something that is also very important, at least when I was trying to get my visa. The way it is structured on the I-20 really matters, at least to some visa officers. I know some people who had like similar funding structure to other people, but the problem was that they had loans and the loan was clearly stated on their I-20 as a loan. And the visa officer saw it as a red flag and then they got denied because they had loans. While some other schools, they structured it as personal funds, even though it was a loan. And then it was left to the student to decide how they want to tell their story to the visa officer. So if you have that option of, talking to your admission director or your Office of International Affairs, try to talk to them and try to tell them they should try to structure, like, it is very unlikely that the school will change their process if they already have a process, but if they can, tell them to state it as maybe personal funds. Like the best they can probably do is state it as personal funds. I don't know that they will state it as what's it called, family funds, if it is not family funds. But they might be willing to state it as personal funds for you so that you can then, tell your story in a way that sounds really convincing to your visa officer.
All right, thank you for that. So we're still on the years visa interview process. So Isaac, I'm going to come to you now. How difficult was it for you to find dates? Because I think that's a problem that's been coming up, the long wait times for dates. So one, how quickly were you able to find dates? Or even just how do you even schedule dates in first instance? And then secondly, how easy was it? And then for people who are not finding dates, what are the available options to them?
Okay, so once you make your payment is confirmed on the platform, it's pretty straightforward. It just takes you to where you can pick dates, basically. And the first shock is usually the fact that when you try to schedule dates, you start seeing dates for next year, and you're like, it seems I won't be able to get a date before my interview. But then the good thing is, the more you keep checking regularly, maybe every day or every few hours if possible. And if you can join WhatsApp groups. I know there are a number of WhatsApp groups where, once there's an available date, it's posted on the platform. So even if you're not checking your phone, I mean, we all have our lives outside, checking for US visa dates. So you can't do that consistently. So even when you're not aware of, current dates being available, if you're on that WhatsApp group, you can easily get, updates on that. So, and then in my own case, I'd like to think that, I was rewarded a bit. God rewarded me because I was stressed during the pre-approval processing, that delayed me. And when I reached out to my other friends, they'll be like, no, I didn't experience this. And I did, and it was really, nerve-wracking. But then once I got through that stage, I was actually able to get a date, weeks of searching. And my interview was not that far. I think I started searching in March, and before the end of March, I actually got a date. So, but this varies. Some might not see almost immediately, but you have to keep checking. And like I said, join platforms. And another thing you can do, but that will be if it's already getting close to your resumption date, is to maybe seek an emergency or an expedited appointment. But that's if you've already scheduled a date, it's far, maybe beyond your resumption date, and your resumption date is close. So in my own case, it wasn't really an option because I was checking for dates in March, resumption is in August, so I couldn't use the expedited appointment route. But for those that we have that option, maybe you schedule a date is showing November, for example, and you're ready in June or July, you can actually request for an expedited appointment so that you can get a closer date. But I think the good thing is, because I'm seeing those WhatsApp groups, I can see that dates are, popping up, more frequently. I know there are a number of dates in April and more in May and June. So I don't know if that's an issue at the moment, but I know for those that are actually seeking dates actively, they should have seen by now. But of course, you can fact check me on that. So really, that's the process for dates. I didn't really have issues with that. But if you do, like I said, check WhatsApp groups, if it's getting close to your resumption date, seek for an expedited appointment. And of course, I know there are also people that, help out agents in court. If you're comfortable and can afford them, you can also reach out to them. I know some people I know did that and they were actually able to get a closer date. So depends on, what route you want to pass through.
All right. Thank you for that, Isaac. And Aminatou, I'm going to come back to you. So this is about the actual visa interview, and it's a 3-part question. So one is, what are the common visa interview questions, and how can applicants prepare for them? Second is, how should students respond to questions about funding and post-MBA plans? Because I think those are the major components of the visa interview. And the third question is, what's in your experience or from what you know about the process, do you think are red flags that typically lead to rejection?
Okay.
It's a lot, I know, but I'm happy to take it again.
No, don't worry. I think I'll start and then we can then, just take it piece by piece.
Okay.
So, to your first question, the common visa interview questions and how people can prepare for them. I'm happy to drop a transcript if it helps anybody. This was transcripts that we compiled when, we were trying to get visas. Some people got approved, some people got denied. So you might be able to see, if you have the time to look through those transcripts, you would see the conversation that went on between people and visa officers. But typically the questions are usually basic. It's tell me, about yourself. What are you going to do in the US? And then they ask you if you have any family in the US. They ask you how you're financing your program. They ask you for your post-MBA plans. And the point is, for every question that you're asked, it can vary by visa officer. But the main thing is, for every question you're asked, you have to make sure you tie it back to your own country, if that makes any sense. So if they ask you, what are you going to do in the US? You can say something like, oh, I'm going to pursue my MBA, in whatever. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to come back to my own country to take up a managerial position or whatever. So by saying you want to come back to your own country to take up a managerial position, you're demonstrating that you have ties to your own country, because that's like the most important thing for the visa officer. You are applying for a non-immigrant visa, and that means you do not have any intention, or you have to show that you don't have any intention to come to the US and then live in the US without, or converting to immigrant status, if that makes any sense. You said you want to come to school to study. They want to believe you're coming to school to study. So you have to tell them that you come to school to study, and when you're done with your studies, you will go back. So everything you're doing is to demonstrate that you have an intent to come back, and you have to be able to demonstrate that by showing that you have ties to your home country. So ties could be anything from real estate, having real estate here. The interesting thing about the US visa interview is they would typically tell you, like, go with documents, but nobody has the time to look at your documents. The interview goes out like really fast. It's like 5 minutes and they're done. They've made a decision on whether they want to approve you or whether they want to reject you. So you can go with as many documents as you want to. You find people carrying like huge files, but nobody is really going to look at it, except maybe you get pushed to like administrative processing or something. Then the visa officer can, take a closer look at your case. Or if you've been denied before and you're reapplying for a visa, they might ask for some of those documents. But if it's your first time applying, it's always great to have it with you, because if they ask for something, you want to be able to present it to them. So some of the things you want to take with you, if you're taking study leave from work, one of the ways you can demonstrate ties to your home country is by saying that you're taking study leave. So you want to have a letter to support that from your company. And when they ask you a question, what are you doing, or what are your post-MBA plans, or I'm coming back to work in this company, I'm taking this managerial position, I have a letter from my office to support what I am saying. Do you understand? You don't necessarily have to tell them that you want to show them, just let them know that you have that document with you. Because if you're also too eager to show that, oh, I have a document, I want to show it to you, they might deny you, thinking that, oh, this person is lying, I don't trust this person. So it's really just psychological. There's nothing like there's no science to it. You will read some stories. Like I said, I have transcripts that I can share with you guys. You will read some stories and you'd wonder why people got rejected, but it is what it is. Sometimes as well, it's because you've probably made an error on your DS-160. It could be a reason for denial. If you said something, maybe your date of birth is different from what you've submitted to your DS-160, they could deny, your visa because of that. So you have to be very careful when you're filling that DS-160 form. And like Isaac said, make sure to, take your time. There's no rush. Don't submit too early. Try to make sure that you have as much information as possible. Read it as many times as possible before you submit your DS-160. Because once you've clicked submit, you cannot change it except you go back and, start the entire process all over again. And then you might be able to change it at that point. But for your sake, just take your time, look at that document properly. If there is an error, the visa officer can reject you. Another common reason for rejection, apart from your failure to demonstrate ties, is if maybe you have family in the US. I would say typically what you should count as family would be maybe you have a brother or an immediate sister. If you have a cousin, you don't have family in the US. Do not say that you have family in the US. If you have a distant cousin, you don't have family in the US. The only time you can say yes, or you can answer yes to that question, is if you have maybe your mom, your dad, or your immediate family member. And the thing about having those people as well is, if they haven't even listed you anywhere on their documents, you are free to say you don't have family in the US, right? Maybe when they were submitting their visa application, they haven't listed your name anywhere, so you're not showing anywhere on their documents. You can say you don't have family in the US. But outside of that, be very careful when you're answering that question, because if you answer yes to I have family in the US, then you are putting yourself at a risk of them contesting whether you are actually going to come back, because the condition for you is going to be conducive, if that makes any sense. So I don't know if there's any other question I haven't answered, but I feel like I sort of
you've answered them across everything you said. Thank you for that. That was very detailed. I appreciate it. So the next question now is, I don't know if either of you has any experience with this, but if you could talk about it, how to handle rejection. So if someone is rejected, how do they recover from it? What do they need to do to present a stronger case at the next interview? Any of you can go with take the question.
Okay, so I can answer the question. I mean, you don't have time, so the earlier you're able to get over the rejection, the better. I mean, I know somebody who got rejected like 5 times or 6 times in the space of 2 years before they finally got approved. So it depends on, your program start date and what's it called now? The date your program actually starts and the date you get rejected. So if your program starts in June, or say your program starts in September, for example, your program starts in September and you get rejected in June, you have time, right? So first things first, you've been rejected, pay another visa fee, start searching for dates. Don't wait, like just start. If you can find somebody to help you get a date, just do whatever you can, start searching for dates. Depending on where you get rejected, the situation is different everywhere, right? But some people are able to, fly out of Nigeria to do their interviews. I know some people last year who had to fly to South Africa to get their interview done because they got rejected in Nigeria and they couldn't get dates, right? So maybe it is not encouraged, to be honest, because if you've never gotten a US visa before and you go to South Africa, for example, to try to get a visa, there are very high chances you will get rejected because you're supposed to apply in your own country. But that said, it has been done by people. So only use that option if like you don't have any other choice, right? That's
Yeah.
when you should consider South Africa or other countries. You can go to the UK. I know people who had to fly to the UK to get their visa approved. But in Nigeria, you can also consider maybe going to Abuja, for example, if you get rejected in Lagos, or going to Lagos if you get rejected in Abuja. But I don't know why anybody would want to go to Lagos from Abuja anyway, because Lagos facilities is interesting to say the least, right? So pay for a new visa fee immediately as soon as you can. If you can pay another, I don't think the portal will open that day, so you might have to wait till the second or third day, but pay as soon as possible. Pay a new fee, start searching for dates. Now, you're searching for dates. What do you then do concurrently? You have to try to understand the reason you got rejected, right? Nobody's going to tell you the reason you got rejected. Everybody gets the same slip, the same blue slip. So you don't know why you've been rejected. You don't know if it's because of an error. You don't know if it's because of something they said. But if you can get additional funding from your school at that point, then reach out to your school, let them know you've been rejected, and ask for additional scholarship if it is possible. Because part of the reasons you could be rejected, maybe it's because the visa officer feels that your loan is too high and you might not be able to
Yeah.
afford the fees. So negotiate with your school, try to see if they can increase your scholarship. That's one. Two is you can also try to, get additional documents that you would use to support your case. Right now, you'll be rejected. Try to see if you can find what's it called, real estate documents. Now, this time you're putting it in your application because the first time it wasn't anywhere, right? You just went there, nobody asked you for the document. So now when they ask you, when you're filling your DS-160 again, they would ask you if you've ever been rejected a US visa. You answer yes this time. And when you're answering yes, it will ask you to explain. So in that explanation box, that's the time for you to discuss anything that has changed in your application. If you got additional funding, state that in your application, in that explain box. And you have to say, oh, I was rejected under section, I think it's 214B or whatever. I was rejected under section 214B, likely due to my inability to demonstrate ties to my own country. Here are a couple of things that has changed since the last time that I applied. So you want to demonstrate that your situation has changed. One, you can say, oh, I never told the visa officer that I had real estate in Nigeria. This is the real estate that I have. This is the value of the property. You could use your family's real estate. It doesn't matter, but state it and have a real estate document. I never did this. You have this now. So the money that you got, additional money, put it there. Any other thing that is changing, put it there. Another thing you can do is get congressional help, right? So one thing I forgot to mention, I don't know how true this is, but I've noticed that in certain states in the US, states that are more migrant friendly, they tend to get rejected a lot. So if you're coming to a place like Chicago, for example, I don't know if it is true. I don't have any proof to back it up, but I've noticed it. And the thing with Chicago is the governor of Illinois is very migrant friendly. They would not approach you on the street to ask you for your documents and stuff like that. So if you're coming to a state like that, the visa officers know that those states are immigration friendly. So they want to scrutinize you a little bit more than going to a place like, I don't know, maybe New York, which is less of an immigrant friendly state than Chicago, if that makes any sense, right? So you don't take it personally if you get rejected. It could be because of the state you're going. So just go again and represent your case, right? Reach out to Congress. There's something called congressional help, like I mentioned. Reach out to Congress. That's congressional help is like reaching out to a senator in the states that you're going, right? So every state, every county has a senator. So reach out to that senator, let them know that you applied for a visa, your visa was rejected, and you would like their help, right, to go through the process. They are not really going to help you. Don't expect any serious help, right? But the best they can do for you is ask for additional information. So when you're reaching out to the Congress, you have to show them, you know, anything you're including as ties to your own country or anything you're saying has changed. If you got additional scholarship, attach that letter, additional scholarship letter. If you have any job, attach that. If you're married and your spouse is in Nigeria, but you're traveling, attach your marriage certificate or pictures of your spouse. Anything that helps you to demonstrate ties, attach it to that document, right? They would ask you for, I think, permission or whatever, consent or whatever. So you fill out that consent form, and then when they get all of that information and they're convinced that you're actually genuinely not trying to migrate to the US, they would ask for your new visa appointment date if you already have a visa appointment, and they would ask for your application number. I don't know what else. I don't know what number they ask for, but they would ask for a number that actually ties your application to the form that you filled, your DS-160 number, your appointment application number. And when they get that, what they typically do is they now flag your application to the consular and the visa officer in the new place you're going to, reapply. So if you're going to Abuja this time, once the visa officer opens your DS-160 and they see your application, the first thing that pops up is the letter from that senator. That's the first thing they're going to see. And what that does is it gives the visa officer an opportunity to hear you out. The discretion is still the visa officer's discretion. You can have senatorial letter, you can go and bring your letter from wherever. The senator does not have a power to overturn your decision, but the visa officer would be more patient. They would listen to you, they would allow you to state your case. Now they can start asking you for documents because a senator is on your matter. A senator knows that your visa has been denied and they're saying, this person, I've reviewed their documents, they seem legit. Listen to them, hear their case out, and we would like you to approve the visa, right? So you can then go back, state your case again, and then hope that your visa is approved. Because at the end of the day, the visa officer's decision is a visa officer's decision. The only thing that does is it helps you to get audience from the visa officer. I've heard stories of people who got rejected the first time, went back a second time, and the visa officer said, you were rejected less than 2 months ago, get out. And the person literally had to leave. They didn't even hear their case, right? They didn't have the opportunity to answer any other question. Once they pulled up their DS-160, they just sent them back. But if you have that letter from the Senate, it helps you to at least get heard. Yeah, so that's what you can do if you get rejected.
All right, thank you. Again, very detailed explanation, appreciate it. So this is going to be for you again, Aminat, just because it's only you that's in the US at the moment. So I want to just ask about the health insurance and medical requirements. So one, are medical checkups or vaccinations required for student visas? And two, how does health insurance work for international students?
Okay, so I think this is like school and state specific, but I'll speak to my situation. Unfortunately, I might not be able to speak to other people's stories, right? But in my case, I didn't need any vaccination or whatever insurance before I came to the US, and that's because my school has a program for me. The program kicks in September, which is when my school starts. And when I get here, I can decide whether I want to continue with the school's insurance or I want to get my own personal insurance. The school's insurance per year, I think, is about $4,600. But some people were able to get personal insurance of about $2,000, right? So if you're somebody, and I think to qualify for that personal insurance of $2,000, you have to be less than 30 years old at the time you are applying for the insurance. So if you're somebody who would prefer to, wait, your school should, under normal circumstances, provide you with like immunization support. So even if you got that immunization before you came to the US, they would still give you that shot again. At least in my case, in my school, every one of us had to get the shot, the immunization shot. Otherwise, we couldn't enroll for courses. So whether or not you were enrolled in the school's insurance, the school would give you the immunization. That is my case. I don't know of other schools, but I'm aware that some of my other friends that are in some other schools also got immunization from their school. Now, whether that applies to all the schools in the US, I cannot speak to. But I wouldn't worry too much about immunization coming to the US because the school would handle that for you. If you are not sure, typically your school should send you an email to let you know. But if you're not sure, I'm sure when you got admitted, you must have been attached to an admissions director. So you can just reach out to your admissions director to confirm whether or not, you would need an immunization, and they will direct you to the right office who would answer your questions more appropriately. But on the general scale, you don't need to worry about that until you get to the US.
All right. Thank you. And Ajake, we're going to come to you to explain the Canadian process. I know you touched on it earlier that you had your vaccination and attached it to your explanation letter, but I don't know whether there's anything you need to. Hi, Ajake.
Okay. I think there are two ways. You do an upfront medical for temporary residency. There's also one for permanent residency, but because you're applying for a study permit, you go for the one for temporary residency. I think you have to book that on one website. I think there are two hospitals that can do the medicals for you. I think it involves X-ray, blood work, and all that. I can't really remember what it really entailed. But once you go to the hospital, they will do everything you need to do. And then they will give you like a slip to show evidence that you've done the medicals. They won't tell you your result or anything because it will be sent directly to the embassy. So that's one way of going about the medicals. So that slip they give you, you put in your application. Or you don't have to do the upfront medical. I don't know. I can't remember how much I paid for that. Sorry about that. So the other method is you going like you applying without the medicals. So when IRCC checks your application, they now ask you that you should go for the medicals. Then you now go for it. But the best way is to do it ahead of time so they don't have to go back to you to do something. They'll be back and forth and all that. Just give them all the things you know they need, and then they'll just tell you to like it's approved and for you to send your passport. Instead of them getting back to you to do medicals, you're not going to do medicals, they'll not get back to you again and all that. So avoid that back and forth. Just do the medicals. So that's the story about the medicals. So when you get to Canada, I don't know if there's nothing about immunization in Canada or anything. For health insurance, for Rotman, it's part of your school fees. So you get something called University Health Insurance Plan, which is for 2 years because the MBA is for 2 years. And based on that, there are some things that you're qualified for medical services, for prescription of drugs and all that. So you don't have to pay for that. Once you pay your school fees, it's already included. So I think I don't know if I answered your questions.
Yeah, you did. Okay. Thank you. And excuse me, just before we get to the Q&A, once students get their visas, what are the next steps for the departure, settling in, so things like flights, adjusting to a new environment? What are those dynamics like, and how did you navigate that? So maybe Ajake can start, and then Aminat can go next.
Okay, so once you get your visa, the next thing for you is to be rejoicing because you've gotten the admission. Now you've gotten visa. It's for you to be chilling, and then it's just to be chilling, really, because you know that you're going through like the next phase of your life. So anything you want to do in Nigeria, just do, or wherever you are, just make sure you enjoy yourself before you go to school, because when you go to school, you'll be paying monthly rent. You have more expenses than when you were in your own country. So you need to prepare for that phase. So what I did was to reach out to my friends in Canada to know what's up. So the first thing I was doing was to start looking for where to stay. So fortunately for me, for Rotman, we have like a student housing. So I applied for that first. But because there are a lot of people, a lot of demand for that, I was also looking to other places. In Canada, you can get to share with people, like you share a suite with two people, and then you share bathroom and toilet and all that. So housing is very important because you don't want to get to Canada, especially for the fact that if you don't have anyone you know you're going to stay with. I was fortunate. I had my uncle in Canada already. So the first 2 weeks I stayed with his family, and then before I moved to the student housing. So the first thing to look for housing. The other thing is school. School is just the educational system is not so different, maybe a bit different from whatever country you're coming from. So I think you get used to school. And for Rodman, there were a lot of association, the Black Association, where you can talk to other people. They will help you navigate Canada, and then they will help you, especially if people that are from your same school. So they'll put you through the curriculum and anything, any help that you need. So you need to look for friends, look for those society that you can also like, they are like you, like, so you guys can also share experiences and they can be able to guide you. So I think that's it. You have friends, you've gotten housing, and then will I say that you can look for like a part-time job? I think in Canada you're allowed to work 20 hours per week. So if you think you need money, you need to look for a job because you need to pay those bills. So another thing is to look for part-time job, or you can. So for me, I was able to get on campus, like I was a teaching assistant. So I was helping the professor to teach, helping them mark scripts. So that was like an extra income for me. So you just look for other opportunities to make money, make sure that you have where to stay, how to feed, and all that. I think that's the next step. But while you are in your country, still try to enjoy yourself because you
Mm.
know that you're going to face a new stage entirely. So that's it.
All right, all right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. And I mean that do you have anything to add? Is there anything that's maybe different from your experience?
Yes, so America is man proposes, God disposes. And I'll explain my situation. So for me, my visa got approved, I think August 14 or 15. From the time of your approval, it will take about 5 days for you to pick up your passport. And I traveled out of Nigeria August 24. So it was just like 1 week after my visa got approved. So I was already running late. I was even thinking, oh, what if I go for this interview and I get rejected? Then maybe I would have to like miss orientation, which is something I didn't talk about. So on your I-20, if you happen to fall in the bracket of people whose visa gets rejected, your I-20 has a start date, right? The start date on your I-20 does not necessarily mean the date classes are going to start, right? Classes will typically start maybe like 2 or 3 weeks after your I-20 start date because your school would have like orientation and all of that, right? So if your visa gets rejected, another thing you can do whilst you're waiting, if you're searching for dates and you're not able to get dates on time, is reach out to your school as soon as you can. Like, just make sure whatever you're doing, put your school in loop of the conversation. They really can't help you, but at least they will try their best to see what they can do to support you, if that makes any sense. Like,
Yeah.
help support. I don't know if it makes sense, but the point I'm making is if they can give you a letter of support to show that your classes do not start, because after your I-20 start date, they can turn you back, even if your visa has been approved, they can turn you back at the port of entry. They can send you back, right? So you have to make sure you have a letter to support from your school to support that. Or your I-20 start date is maybe September 5, and you're coming into the US September 13. So your school, the letter will say, oh, please, classes have not started, allow this person to come in, yada, 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 right? So
Yeah.
like I said, in my case, got approved 14th, left Nigeria 25, had less than 1 week. The moment my visa was approved, I not bought anything. I just started packing my bags. But in America, I already had apartments that I started paying for since June. And my approval did not come until August. So I was thinking, oh, I'll get dates, get my visa approved. I didn't think I was going to have a problem, but it is what it is. So yeah, so I was paying rent in the US and I was waiting to get a visa in Nigeria. But the moment I got it, thankfully, I'd already started buying my furnitures and all of that. So I had to pay movers to move the furnitures into my apartment before I got here. It was a very expensive venture, but it was still easier than having to do everything myself, because here in the US, there are a lot of DIY projects, right? Like if you know that you don't have maybe like huge amounts of money to buy stuff, then you have because when you're buying your furniture, you buy the furniture, it comes assembled in a box, and then you have to assemble it yourself. I'm somebody who likes the easy life, so I would rather just pay the people who are bringing it, who are moving it, to assemble it in the apartment. So that was what I did. I got movers who took care of all of that logistics, and then once all of my furniture was packed in one place, they moved everything to my apartment. I gave them permission to enter my apartment before I came. Right. And so when I got here, my furniture was already arranged. Everything was arranged for me. Another thing I should say is typically there are some things that are banned. You're not supposed to bring to the US, things like Pomo, all these kind of things. If you have the chest, you can bring it too. But just know that if you bring it, you would get a strike for violating an immigration law. I think what it takes is like 3 strikes for you to get penalized or something. So I brought Pomo. They collected it from me. I got a strike. Thankfully, nothing else happened. But just know that you get a strike. So, and at the end of the day, I don't know. People were saying it was worth it to bring food, but my personal opinion, it was not really worth it at the end of the day. But when you're coming, at least bring something you can eat for like 1 or 2 months. That you can bring with you, and then when you're settled in, you can now start buying stuff around and everything like that. I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah.
Yeah, it does. It does. Thank you so much. And so we're just going to go into the Q&A session now.
Sorry, and I should also say something. We're in very interesting times, and even when we're not when the times were not interesting, please, if you have any message on your phone, WhatsApp, whatever, where you are criticizing something that is happening, it's not your business. Please delete it. Like, I beg you, because you can get your visa approved, and at the point of entry, you're turned back. It is possible. Another thing I should say is when you're booking your flight, be very careful, right? If your school is in Miami, for example, and you're booking a transit flight, right? You're booking a transit flight from Nigeria. Your flight first stops in, let's say, Philadelphia or New York before you then go to Miami, because the flight system depends on, I can't remember what they call that thing, but whatever, right? So if your flight docks in New York first, and you're going to Miami, make sure, for the love of God, don't say that because you have one distant friend or distant uncle that is in New Jersey, you want to quickly branch at New Jersey before you now go to Miami. They can send you back. Make sure your flight itinerary is from Nigeria to New York, New York to Miami. When you get to Miami, you can go back to New Jersey. But if you say you are going to New Jersey from New York, because New Jersey is very close to New York, they can send you back and say that you say you're coming to school. Your school is in Miami. What are you going to do in New York? You're lying. You're going back home. So things like that can happen. Just make sure when you're booking your flight, even if you're going to stop in New York, because immigration will clear you in the first place you land in the US. Unlike other countries where maybe you're traveling from Nigeria to Qatar, for example, and you're using what's this French airline, KLM or whatever, you first have to go to Paris before you then go to Qatar, right? When they're sending your bag, they'll send your bag directly to Qatar. But in the US, they would send your bag directly to the first US airport that you're landing in. So if you're going to Miami, you have to first claim your bag in New York before you go to Miami, because that is where immigration is going to clear you, right? When immigration clears you from Miami and from New York, you can then go to Miami. if that makes any sense. So don't forget to pick up your bags in New York. It's not like other systems where they send your bag directly to your destination. They'll send your bag to the first US airport that you're landing in. Please, 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 if you have any messages criticizing anybody, criticizing anything, delete it. If you have any messages showing that you want to, the word jackpot, maybe you should even search for keywords on your phone and delete any message that has that. Please, I beg you, delete it, because they can go through your phones to check stuff. So just delete anything that is there. If you can clear your WhatsApp messages, it helps your life, if it makes your life easier, just delete it, because I've heard a lot of horror stories.
All right. Thank you, Aminat. And if you're not aware, Aminat has been kind enough to drop some visa transcripts. Appreciate that. And so we're just going to go to the Q&A session now. So
Okay,
Ajak.
Sorry, Dabira. So before we go into the Q&A, just one final question for Aminat, Ajoke, and Isaac. So if you could do the process all over, right? What do you think you do differently? And then, like, what's your final advice for everybody that is trying to navigate the visa process? Just like in few seconds, if you can cover that. So we can move into the Q&A afterwards. So I think, Aminat, you can go first.
What would I do differently? I don't know if I'll do anything different, except for maybe look at my DS-160 19 times before I submit it, because I later noticed at some point that I had there was an error on my DS-160. So you might want to be very careful. Don't rush to submit your DS-160. And like I said, all of those things I said about like your booking your visa and everything, I think would be very important. So yeah, that would be it. What was your second question again?
Like your final advice to those on the call?
Yeah, so my final advice is weigh the pros and cons of moving to the US before you do. A lot of things are changing, a lot of things are happening. The environment is very uncertain. So weigh the pros and cons very well. Be sure that this decision you're making is your own before you come. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So Ajoke, I think you can go next.
Well, for me, I had a lot of people to guide me. So reach out to as many people as possible during your application, especially those that have gone through the same process. And then be detailed as much as possible. If you've been denied a visa before, don't try to hide it because they know about it. It doesn't mean that it would deny you too. Just like be clear, detailed, and make sure your application is legit, because you will not have an opportunity to defend yourself because there is no interview. So make it as detailed as possible. And one advice I would say that if you're coming to Canada or you're going to US or anything, do not try to at every point that you want to get something, don't try to convert to your local exchange rate. Don't say that you want to buy something for $20. That's 20K in Nigeria. It will really hurt you because the exchange rate especially for Nigeria is really bad. And things are expensive if you're looking at it from your local currency. Don't try to convert anything. Just know that you've left your local country, you're in a new country. Just work with that. That's going to make you happy. And then I would say that I know that a lot of people want to go to another country. It's kind of tough, really. You need to have at least some form of money to be able to survive. So don't just say that I'm going to another country, I'll survive when I get there. It's not that easy. So make sure you have as much money as you can. I know there'll be opportunity to get a job, but even the job market is it's not so easy like that. I pray that everything is easy when you get to whether US or Canada, but just know that at least have something that will help you survive in the other country.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's great advice. So Isaac, you can go.
Yeah, I think in my own case, I won't really say I'd change anything. I think mine was, a bit smooth, so I don't think anything. But in terms of advice to those that will be passing through this or already passing through this stage, I think one thing will be patience. There are some things you can't really control. For example, you submitted your financial documents, you're waiting for your I-20. As long as you've done your own part, you just have to wait. So you don't need to get yourself all worked up. Just continue your normal, existence and codes. And then in terms of the visa interview itself, I think another thing you should put in mind when answering questions is to understand why you've been asked that question. Like Aminat said earlier, they want to be sure you're a student. They want to be sure you can fund your program, and they want to be sure that your plans post MBA is not of immigration intent. You're coming back to your country. So, irrespective of the question you're asked, if you can answer those three questions in whatever question you're asked or whatever answer you're going to give them, I think it makes a whole lot of sense. So, even if it's just one question you're asked, try to answer those three questions in that one question when giving the answer for that. So, that's something that can really help because you don't have all day to explain yourself. So that's what I'd say. Really.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much. So yeah, I think we can get into the Q&A now. Dabira, do you want
to? Yeah, sure. So we're about wrapping up, but before we've got a couple of questions in the chat, and this is for Ajoke. If there's no visa interview, are there situations where people get denied? And if yes, what can they do afterwards?
Yes, I'm not really sure if IRCC will tell you the reason why they denied you. I'm not sure about that, sorry, because I've never really gone through. But I think I've heard of people that got denied and then they just applied again. So you just try to apply again and then to even, I don't know, to try to avoid being denied. Just as what I say, just try to put as much information as possible. Because IRCC won't get back to you that why did you do this or why they'll just deny you. But I don't know if they tell you the reason. I'm not sure about that. But you have the opportunity to apply again. I think I've heard of people that applied again and got the visa late and they still came to school. Like the I-20, I think there's a start date, but for Canadian visa, there's no start date. Because I know for us, orientation started August, and then some people still came in like September and all that. I don't think they had any issues with anything that day. So you can still apply again and still be able to get into school time.
All right, thank you. So there's a question. I don't know who's going to take this, but I intend to have my visa interview in South Africa, but my date was cancelled, and I've not been able to get another date. I am here to submit my DS-160. Can I buy a new MRV to do my interview in Nigeria? I don't know if anyone can take that. Aminat or Isaac.
Yeah, I can take it. So, to the best of my knowledge, you should be able to do that. However, it is possible that things have changed. But I know that normally you're not supposed to, like, I think rule-wise, you're not supposed to be able to do that. But I feel like people were able to get multiple MRVs and search for dates in 2 different places at the same time. When I tried to get a visa at that time. So people did that. So you should be able to do that. Pay separate MRVs, use a separate DS-160 number, and I think use separate phone numbers as well. I'm not sure how that's done. But yeah, so you might want to consult with people who know better in the visa realm just to get your clarification, but I think it is possible.
Right. Thank you, Aminat. Next question. Do you think I should be scared for having a loan on my I-20 as proof of funds?
Yeah, maybe I should handle this. So I don't think that's really a big deal. I mean, even in the States, quite a number of students, majority of them have student loans. The reason why it seems like an issue is because they're trying to, navigate our own uniqueness here when it comes to visa interviews. So as long as you're able to show that one, the loan is valid, you have supporting documents to back up your claim that you have a loan, that would go. And the other thing is, we're also looking out for immigration intents. So how can you pay back your loan in your local currency? Do you have a plan? And then once you can tell them, yes, this loan is valid, and this is how I plan to repay my loan in Naira. Let's assume you're Nigerian. This is how I intend to repay my loan in Naira in so amount of years. Of course, it's still subjective. It's a subjective interview, but that's the best way you can approach it. A lot of people get their student visas with loans, so you shouldn't discourage yourself just because of that. What should be more focused on is how am I going to defend my loan option? And like I said, the best way is to be able to convince the visa officer that I have a plan to repay that loan. And if it's Empower, for example, where you have to pay, monthly interest payments while you're in school, you should also still be able to convince the visa officer that you've thought about that and you know you're going to pay your monthly interest while you're in school. So it's just for you to have a plan. That's all really. It's not a big deal. I have loans, so it's not a big deal.
Right. Thank you.
Also, I want to say that in Canada, I know people that took student loans from Empower and they still got the visa. So fine, there's no interview, but that's where the proof of fund comes in. So you need to table all the available funds that you have for your application. So the loan can be there too, and the amount you're expecting. And maybe in your letter of explanation, you can explain how you tend to repay the loan. Most people, what they do is that once they get the loan, they make sure that they have enough money to pay back the interest monthly. Maybe the loan is let's say it's $40,000 and your school fees is about maybe 25 or so, because the loan is either for your school fees and your living expenses. So they don't get to use all the money for school fees. So they keep that money in the account and start paying interest from it. So it's not as if you use all the money for your school fee and you now have to start looking for ways to pay the interest. So you just make sure that the principal amount you get, you don't spend everything, and then from that you're able to pay the interest on a monthly basis until you start working or whenever you're able to make the funds by yourself.
All right, thank you for that, Ajoke. And this is for you once again. For the is it a red flag if my primary source of living expenses is from sales of land I own and other secondary sources are from employment income and the small business I run?
Is that for me?
Yes, it is for you.
Okay, so you said, can you repeat it? I wanted to even check the question with you, but I can't seem to find it. But you can just say that again.
Yeah. Is it a red flag if my primary source of living expenses is from sales of land I own and other secondary sources are from employment income and the small business I run?
Okay, I don't think it's a red flag because the school fees is a lot. I think for Rodman it was about 140 something thousand Canadian dollars, though you get scholarship. They don't expect you to make the major source of income from your employment income. They don't expect that. But what you can do is that you can explain it in your letter of explanation that the inflows in my account from this, sale of that. I don't think it's gonna be a red flag. But if that's your only ties to Nigeria, I don't know if that would be a red flag. Maybe that real estate property is like you saying, I have this land somewhere and I'm coming back to develop it or something, and that's the only thing you have and you sold. Maybe that can be a red flag. It will mean that you've sold everything you have in Nigeria and you don't plan to come back. So whatever you're selling, maybe it should not be the only thing that will tie you back to Nigeria. But if that's not the only thing, I think that's not a red flag.
All right, thank you. And this is for Aminat or Isaac. About the I-20, what if you have a place to stay in the US? Is it necessary to state it? I mean, staying with your boyfriend.
Sorry, I didn't get the question. I didn't really hear. Can you please repeat?
Yeah, sure. About the I-20, what if you have a place to stay in the US? Is it necessary to state it? I mean, staying with your boyfriend, for instance, and that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, I don't know if Amina wants to go, but I think she's confusing the I-20 with the visa interview. So the I-20 is just for to give basic details, or maybe your program, your school, and most importantly, your financials. So there's really nothing stated there about who you will be staying with. What you can get is maybe this person will be funding part of my program. So I don't know if that's what she's asking. I don't know if she can clarify, but there's really nothing about who you'll be staying with. But if she's asking if you can talk about that at the visa interview, that would definitely be a huge red flag. Because like I mentioned earlier, one of the major things they're looking out for is immigration intent. So if you're saying you're coming back to Nigeria and you have a boyfriend or a stable relationship in the United States, so that means you're not coming back. You're probably going to go there and get married to your boyfriend, and that will most likely be a straight rejection. So even if that's the plan, you shouldn't talk about that at all. So I don't know if
all right. All right. Thank you, Isaac. So that brings us to the end of today's session. We once again appreciate our panelists for their time, and wish everyone a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, bye everyone. Thank you
Yeah,
everyone.
thank you
Take
everyone.
care. Yeah, bye.
Bye, everyone. All the best.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.